Metro Studios, the AusBiz COB is the key stuff you need to know about the day in business and finance.
Welcome to the COB this Thursday. I'm Juliette Sarley. Great to have your company. We are seeing a big rally in lithium stocks this afternoon on some news that Vanguard has bought a stake in PLS. Let's just have a look at where the overall market has ended. Pretty flat. It really was today a battle between the weakness in the tech players, with Xero coming back online after its near $4 billion bet on the American accounting and invoicing firm Melio Payments. You also then had a big way there coming through on the overall tech sector, while we saw CBA trading fairly flat after hitting a fresh record, but a bit of upside coming through from some of the other banks. So really today it was, as we close out, fairly unchanged there on the CBO 200 rather. CBA's on everyone's mind at the moment. A bit of a tepid Thursday was certainly the theme of the day. And of course, we're reacting still to the implications of what we've seen with the tenuous truce between Israel and Iran and what all that means for the US dollar. Now, Clifford Bennett was just speaking to Andrew on the close, saying that if this ceasefire, as tenuous as it is, holds, he thinks that that could actually be a big crash for the greenback. And certainly you've seen the dollar dip, specifically against the euro, hitting a 3.5-year low, boosting our dollar, of course, boosting a lot of currencies, but something to watch as we continue to monitor the developments out of the Middle East. Also tonight, we're looking ahead to a data dump from the US. We've got durable goods orders. GDP is the main one, of course, wholesale inventories, manufacturing, pending home sales and jobless claims all due. And that comes after 2 days of testimony as well from the US Fed Chair Jay Powell, who reiterated to the Senate Banking Committee overnight that the Fed is well positioned to wait and see before it cuts rates again, really waiting to see the inflationary effects of President Trump's wide-ranging tariffs as we count down to July 9. Let's have a look at some of the sectoral moves today, and we mentioned the weakness coming through in Xero, weighing on the overall tech space, although NextDC looking pretty good there. The banks, ANZ was a front runner today. There's news that tech boss Gerard Florian will depart the bank, and this comes just after a week following retail head Mele Carnegie saying she would leave, all on the back of the new CEO, Nuno Matos. ANZ shares up 2.2%. CBA, gosh, another record high. It touched an intraday high of $192, closing higher by a third of 1% to $191.66. Of course, analysts now saying this is going to look like it's headed towards a $200 stock. And having a look at healthcare stocks today, really powered a lot by some positive news coming through out of Neuren Pharmaceuticals, and of course a bit of a defensive bid there. CSL was up by about 0.6%. On that news, in terms of some of the corporate news, Neuren Pharmaceuticals spiking. The company received a US patent for its treatment of Pitt-Hopkins syndrome. Shares up 5% to $13.19. We just spoke to the CEO, John Pilcher, about what this means. That interview will be on our website shortly. Xero, of course, slumping because it was that discounted $1.85 billion placement to fund the Melio buyout. Horizon also in the news. It put a number on its full year 25 guidance, expected to come in just above $1.6 billion. And look, this ongoing bid for Pointsbet, really quite extraordinary. Mixi making a second all-cash takeover offer for Pointsbet, still at that $402 million bid. But betr saying, of course, yesterday, look, our shares were not counted in the shareholder vote. Our votes, rather, were not counted. It had the power to block the takeover by Mixi. Computershare today saying, oh, mea culpa, we forgot to count the betr votes. So it continues the drama for Pointsbet. Meanwhile, DroneShield up another 9.3% after gaining almost 20% yesterday. That's after that $61.6 million European military deal. And Hum Group also continuing to rally. It jumped as much as 11.5% yesterday. It's up another 5% today. The buy now, pay later company confirming a takeover offer from the family office of Chairman Andrew Abercrombie. Let's get into the details now with Mathan Somasundaram from Deep Data Analytics, who joins me now. Mathan, great to see you. And I mean, this has all just happened, this news at least, in the last sort of half hour or so, that Vanguard has bought into PLS and really lifting a lot of these lithium players.
Yeah, it's the time for the dogs to bark. It's usually you get the tax loss selling peaking in the third week of June, and the fourth week of June you'll get a few buying in. A lot of those ones tend to be that they're down, down weight into June, the really beaten up ones, and then they recycle back into it. And the ETF players are doing the same. It's just a rebalancing that's playing out, especially in the bottom end. A lot of those ETF players like Vanguard would be buying in ahead of the traffic because most of the people are going to buy straight after the June 30 deadline.
All right, so just a bit of end of financial year positioning, you think?
Yeah, generally, stocks that have underperformed quite a bit in the last 12 months, you can put a lot of stocks in there. They're making decent moves in the last week. Uh, and I hate to say it, you do get a lot of M&A talk about beating up stocks as well. And it's funny how that always comes in the last couple of weeks before a financial year end.
All right, well, speaking of market momentum, I mean, you can't really fight the trend against CBA at the moment. I know you've got thoughts, though, on CBA and its price.
Look, it's a meme stock, right? It's got nothing to do with valuation. And I know there's a lot of people who come up with so many different thematics for it. It's the most expensive bank. If the bank was so good, why would the government have to, give us a guarantee on the accounts? One. Two, if the bank is so good, why, and the economy is so good, why is the RBA talking about rate cuts? So it's got nothing to do with fundamentals. It's got to do with the size. It's the biggest stock in the market. ETF flow over the last 3 years, passive money inflow outweighs anything. The actives have basically got outflows. So the money is going into passive. Passive is buying CBA because it's the biggest stock in the market. BHP and CBA, it's about 20-25% of the index. So in context, you can buy two stocks and control the index. Now, the main driver is the currency. So US dollar is falling. It's now 3-year lows. So that's boosted the Aussie dollar despite weaker commodity prices. So in that cycle, the currency is holding up despite weaker macro. So in that context, the floor in the short term is chasing the currency, and that's benefiting CBA. So CBA could be 200, could be 220, 230, it doesn't matter. It's just as long as the currency holds up, the global flow will come in. And when the currency rolls over, they will leave.
All right, well, let's talk about some of the news from today. Xero in focus, that near $4 billion bid for Melio, and of course coming back online after the placement. Is there concern here too about dilution?
Yeah, I mean, that's the natural thing. And also, Australian, I mean, it's a New Zealand company, but the track record of going overseas is always tricky. Xero, we were always worried that the way they grew in the local market may not work as well in the US. They've actually proven that wrong. They've done quite well. They've executed well, but this is a big place that a lot of people are doing. And I think the shareholders are going to be a bit scared because we've seen what's happened with someone like James Hardy at the end of a cycle, making a big play. Did that play out for them? The share price tells you no. So Xero, they've done well. They're in the right place. Now the question is about execution. Is the US economy going to slow down? I think that's inevitable. Is this the time to play into US? I think that's going to be the tricky story. I'd be a bit cautious.
All right, and Neuren, an interesting one too. We spoke to the CEO there. That's such a fascinating move that they're making. They're really trying to deal with Pitt Hopkins, which doesn't have a treatment at the moment. Are you looking at some of these mid-cap tech players or biotech players?
Oh, look, I'm a big fan of the biotech sector. It's I guess it gets a lot of attention when mining stocks are not doing well because it's a high risk return play. It is high risk return. I mean, Neuren previous cycle nearly doubled to what it was here, and then it's pulled back over the last year or so. So in context, the market gets overly excited, then get overly pessimistic. Neuren works in very unique space in a number of different areas that they work in. And as you said, these are so unique. There isn't a lot of alternatives. Anything that gets approval will be quite positive for them. So it is one of those ones where I think if you're a biotech investor, you must like pain. But I think the good thing about the sector is when people don't want to be in that sector, that's when you want to pick the good quality ones. And I think Neuren is one of those. They've got a fair amount of ponies in the game, and all you need is one or two to run, and the stock has pretty good runs.
Okay, so tomorrow, I believe, is it tomorrow? No, Monday is the last day of the financial year, isn't it? So are you expecting, to see some, I guess, a bit of, what do we call it, window dressing, fireworks coming through in the last couple of days?
I think we've seen a fair bit already this week, and I expect to see a lot more. Look, it'd be funny to see how many people actually buy CBA in the last week, just so that they can put it up on the annual report to say that they held CBA. But the reality is, I think the interesting part is going to be you want to pick stocks where fund managers are holding substantial part of a small cap, because all of those fund managers will be coming in the next couple of days to, one, window dress it, two, straight afterwards, a lot of these good quality companies that have been beaten up on tax loss selling will see dramatic bounce. So you'll see some of these beaten up dogs bounce in the first couple of weeks of July. So it's worth keeping it, eye open. It's going to be entertaining.
Any name that you want to give us for those? Or there's too many?
No, we've got a few in our heads, but look, it's the ones that people talk about. The way I would say it is, you got to look at things that people loved and actually have a very good business model. But it's just that we've had one-off or a cyclical downside, and the market's thrown it out. So if it's underperformed, say 70, 80% in the last 12 months, the trick here is, of course, you need to do your work so that the stock's got enough money to keep itself going. Then you can fund its way to the recovery story. If it can't fund its way, then it's going to dilute you. So there's a couple of little tricky plays to play, but I think you've got a backward management, good business models, beaten up on cyclical news. That's the upside there.
All right, Mathan, we'll chat again. Enjoy the last crazy couple of days of the financial year. Mathan Somasundaram from Deep Data Analytics, and of course, the stock that he's talking about. I wonder what that was. Well, the stock of the day was DroneShield, and Andrew spoke to our experts, Grady Wolf from Bell Direct, Howard Coleman from Team Invest, for their thoughts.
The contracts have gone from strength to strength. We're seeing tailwinds. We're seeing more contracts announced more frequently. So that signals there's a lot of demand for what they're doing. We're seeing contracts. We're seeing drones are the way forward for all military at the moment. So that's how people are sadly getting attacked mostly. And in war, there used to be the ability to hide, and there used to be the ability to kind of shelter and have a bit of reprieve. But now these drones just follow you everywhere. So it's absolutely devastating. So the fact that it's in the right place at the right time, but they also don't hurt people, they take down the drones. So it's not like an ESG concern on that front.
And obviously they're wonderful tailwinds, and they've just got a large contract. But they've gone from 100,000 in revenue to 57 million over the past 10 years, and they still weren't making a profit. So how do we know the extra 61 million will make a profit? But I'm very encouraged to hear that you heard they've got over 200 engineers. That's very positive for developing new products. And one of the things that, if you meet them again, it may be worth suggesting is, why don't they come up with a profit shield so that they can actually make some money every year?
All right, well, a flat session again, but let's have a look at some of the leaders today, and really talking here about PLS, and Mathan made that good point about year-end buying into some of these lost stocks. But Vanguard buying a stake in PLS, former Pilbara Minerals, becoming a substantial shareholder in the lithium producer. PLS releasing a statement to the ASX that Vanguard now owns 5.25% of the voting shares. And of course, we touched on Neuren Pharmaceuticals on the back of its positive update, lifting some of the other healthcare companies to clarity there, up 14.4%. Let's have a look at the laggards. It was Xero, which we have touched on quite a bit as it came back online after its capital raising to buy that near $4 billion deal into Melio. We also had Nick Scali down 3.6%, as well as Guzman y Gomez. Let's have a look at some of the small cap winners today. Aravella Therapeutic was up by an impressive 15%. Beam there up by 13.3%. To the downside in the small end of town, a lot of the mining players, so Rand Mining, Encounter Resources, Theta Gold Mines, still seeing a little bit of a flat momentum coming through in the gold price. Gold holding around $3,343 US an ounce. Investors, of course, really remaining cautious ahead of the key US data that we are getting out tonight, which takes us to that. The US GDP for the March quarter tipped to contract by 0.2%. We also get US advanced goods trade balance for May. Now a $92 million deficit expected there, and ECB President Lagarde will also speak. Tomorrow, Friday, Japan unemployment rate and retail sales data, China industrial profits for May tipped to lift, and an AGM for James Hardie. But don't forget as well that it is the last call. So we are going to have a great panel. I feel like I shouldn't share all the names that are coming, but some of your favorites, I do want to name drop a couple. I know a lot of people love Jonathan Takadina's insights. He's going to join us from MPC Markets. We've also got Julia Lee from FTSE Russell, and a great panel as well as we look into the changes that are coming in terms of July 1st tax implications. Let's just have a quick look at where the market has closed. Pretty unchanged there in terms of where the overall market finished on the CBO 200, and down by about 8.4 points on the ASX 200 to 8,550 points. So that late push into some of the lithium stocks, lifting the materials sector by 0.1%. Healthcare lifted on defensive buying. Financials lifted by the banks, CBA in particular, which Mathan Somasundaram calls a meme stock. And of course, Xero weighing on the overall IT sector, down 2%. And despite the fact that Nvidia, the godfather of AI, hit a record high overnight, an analyst in the US suggesting that Nvidia could get to $6 trillion US. All right, that does it for today. We'll be back from 9:45 a.m. Eastern tomorrow. Have a great evening and we'll see you then.